Ready to rock when you are.
Okay, Marty, how did you start shooting surfing, mate? What happened there?
Well, at the time I was attending university in Brisbane, a geology of all courses, Bachelor of Science, and I wasn't really cutting it. So rather than have rocks on the brain, I thought I'd settle for rocks in the head. I thought I'd settle for water on the brain, and become a surfer, which was true to my inner nature rather than what my parents wanted me to do. So I pissed off from uni and hung out at Noosa and Coolangatta Surf Club and thought, hey, I got to justify this scam of hanging at the beach. So I thought, take photos. Now there's a plan.
And so what kind of equipment were you using back then?
Well, you used to have this very primitive German camera, and you open up the shutter, you put the piece of cheese in front of the mirror, and you press a button and it snaps the rat's head off. It was so mechanical, it was like a Russian tank. It was manual everything, Tim. It was like manual focus, manual exposure, and manual hand crank. It was, I think it was a Kent 500 f8 lens with a Pentax. It was hand crank bloody everything. I can't remember, it was that far back.
So what was the year back? When did you start really getting involved in shooting? And how did you become?
About 73, 74. My father was actually a cinematographer. He used to shoot with Bolex 16s, and he had a tripod and a lens he set me up with when he realised I wasn't going to cut it at university, and I started developing my own black and whites and shooting a few things for tracks.
So tell me where you grew up and what areas were your principal spots that you shot?
Well, I was living in Bris Vegas at the time and gravitated between Noosa at first, and soon realised after 2 or 3 years at Noosa that all the action was on the Goldie, where Rabbit, PT and Michael lived. So I soon moved base, moved camp in about 74, 75. I moved down from Noosa to the Gold Coast and started shooting photos there after I went broke the first time and had to go out bush to pay my brother back.
So where did you shoot? Dbah, or?
It was mainly at that time, Tim, it was mainly snapper, Kira and Dbah, and Greenmount was always a running away perspective, so it was mainly Kira, snapper and Dbah, mate.
And talk about snapper and the super, talk about how that's changed over the last 10 years.
Well, it has changed for reasons of stabilising real estate investment on the foreshore. That's the principal reason it's there, and it's actually a super hoax. It's so crowded on any recreational surfing day. Sure, it's a mammoth and awesome lineup, but where we've gained one super bank, we've lost 4 or 5 smaller fun recreational banks. And Greenmount used to be the place where you hone your cutback, and it's not there anymore, running close to the rocks. See, in those days, after the cyclones of the late 60s, early 70s, we had banks really close to the shore, perfect for the ocean energy coming right in close and just exploding right on a bank, and it was perfect for both surfers and photographers. And well, it's changed, you can't do anything about it, but people froth about a good wave at Superbank now, but you should have been here 30 years ago.
Tell us how good Kira could get.
Kira was one of the surfing wonders of the top 10. So one of the surfing top 10. I mean, like, fortunately, I actually got my fair share of barrels out there, because that was half the scam. Hey, half the scam was to get the good waves in. And Kira would really, it would really shake the tree. You'd really get in, and you'd really get a filthy barrel, and 1 or 2 good barrels that last you the whole day.
And so, would you make a good living out of being a surf photographer, or is it just a bit of a pastime hobby that,
Back then or now?
Back then.
Back then, we were paid $40 a cover, you know, and there was no advertising sales because surfing wasn't mainstream corporate. It wasn't an established, accepted sport. We were social outlaws. We were scumbuckets. Hey, if you wanted to be a surf photographer, you loved shooting photos. You loved the artistic soul element. You were not in it for the bucks like like the motor drive Rambos are today. It was all about because you love to shoot, the dance of the sport.
So that was some of the best shoots you've had.
Now or then?
No, but then.
I think one of the best shoots I had was Big Groin Kira when they had a Queensland titles, and MP, Druin and Rabbit were out there, and it was like solid 8 to 12 feet, and it was pretty amping. It was good, but I think the best shoots I've had were with Kira or Burley, and really I think the first stubbies in '77, that was pretty all time.
Talk about the stubbies. How good an event was that to shoot at?
Oh, hey. The first time I remember driving up from Sydney with Laurie McGuinness, who shared Petty with me, and we drove up and we got there like on a Friday night or something, and it was like a 4 to 6 foot swell and building, and it lasted the whole week. The whole week was between 6 to 8 feet offshore and just constantly streaming barrels, and here's all the famous surfers in one place you want to shoot. It was like, hey, a fiesta festival of surfing, and it was like, hey, this is a dream. Should be more of it.
And who's some of the great surfers you've shot? Talk about PT and Michael Pettis.
We had PT, Rabbit, Michael, Ockie, and there was also a great list of local scallywags and ratbags like China and Butto, and a list too numerous. You know who you are out there. I've shot you for ads. You're all bloody good. You're all winners on your day. But then the media has to have heroes, and Ockie on his day was pretty bloody phenomenal. That guy had all the attributes of a killer surfer. Tom Carroll, Sean Thompson. Tom Curran was good. You know, they're all winners on their day.
Okay, so did you embrace digital photography when it came along, or you just sort of...
I was reluctant to. I actually had all my gear ripped off by some druggy scumbag from my house. And I was forced to accept, because I didn't have camera insurance, all I could get was domestic house insurance, and I got a replacement digital camera which dragged me, heels and all, kicking reluctantly into the digital era. And when I got my head around it, I was going, hey, this is all right. No processing costs, just like pop-up toast, instant service. It's a bit of a win there, despite every other prick getting on the bandwagon.
And have you done a lot of travelling?
Yeah, I've done my share. I haven't embraced the full, done the full Pro Tour groupie thing. I mainly did Hawaii, South Pacific, 18 trips to Indonesia, 3 to Japan, Mentawais, India, and all the South Pacific third world sort of places where you get a suntan and you don't just chase ASP points.
Did you shoot much in Indonesia, like in the early days when it was still undiscovered?
Nah, mate, I got there. Pagey dragged me along as his sidekick in about '84. And once I got over my language and cultural barrier syndrome thing, when I settled in, I was up every 2 months of the year I was there, you know. It was good value and I loved it, yeah. Actually, the first time I shot Padang, it was a 55-minute bushwalk over hill, ravine, gully, beach, up ravine and cliff, not like the drive it is today. And there were no jet skis. You had to get out there through your own grunt. I remember it clearly. I was with my friend Darren Hill, a Gold Coast surfer, and we were trying to shoot some ocean and earth and fox stuff at Bingen. And we were getting pissed off by all the football players and the Brazilians and French guys dropping in, as they do after 11 o'clock when the Vale party animal wakes up and wants to go for a surf. So Darren Hill suggested, hey, let's go to a place called Lakey Peak, Sumbawa. And he gave me the fairy tale story of how it's a studio, the light's in the right place, and it's got the awesome banks, and you go there at the right phase of the moon and the tides, and it's all cooking, bro. I followed the fairy tale, I went over, and it was fairy tale to a script. The light was shining into the barrel, the tides were right, it was a photographer's delight, and I was back there for the next 14 years in a row. What's
the best thing about being a surf photographer, Marty?
Okay, the best thing, as long as we can balance it with the worst thing.
Yeah.
The best thing is having your office on the beach. Hey, shooting photos of surf, particularly in the water, is like if you've got any artistic or creative photographer streak in you, it's you get to have your cake and eat it. You're part of the action, you're in amongst it, and you're celebrating and living and sharing the moment with some killer action, and that's the fun part. But the hard part is selling it and getting paid, and that's another story.
So have you had many photos published, Marty?
Yeah, well, I paid the house off, I paid the mortgage off, Tim. So that's not too shabby for a bloke who's got his office on the beach.
Had any near-death experiences being a surf photographer?
Yeah, I got run over once really badly at Bingen and nearly severed an artery. Got dragged up the cliff and rushed to a hospital by my mates from the Mount Woodgee team. I've been knocked out by a water housing and floating face up as someone threw me on a surfboard. And I've had a couple of near-death experiences and a couple of absolute floggings and thrashings from being at the right spot at the wrong time.
Talk about some of the best shots you've shot.
Tahiti, without a doubt. Tahiti and Lakey Peak. They were my studios. I went to Tahiti in '99 for the Gotcha Pro, and I scored a couple of billboard, a couple of big posters. And while everybody else was sitting in the boat, me and Tom Survey shot it from the sideline and were able to get some pretty killer water angles of some pretty gnarly top 16 action and some awesome pits. It was like shooting fish in a barrel, mate.
What about any other definitive shots like that? Let's talk about that PT shot.
Oh, the PT shot was shot 75 at Kira Spot X, just the south side of Kira Groin, when PT was just emerging as a professional surfer. Unfortunately, Albie Fowles didn't like the photo so much, it virtually skyrocketed me into the position as the new track staff photographer. And it's still one of my favourite iconic shots because it had all the hallmarks of style and revelling in the dance. It was killer, yeah.
And so was there many surf photographers back then?
No, mate, we were rare as hen's teeth. What idiot, anybody who refused to work for a decent living in those days couldn't be all bad, mate. We did it because we loved it and we were drawn to it with a passion. There was Dick Hoole, Laurie McGuinness, Steve Corr, and just a few other people that have faded, but it was a part-time income, if that. Very small part-time income. Hey, the average Tracks magazine was 24 or 36 pages, mono, black and white. Surfing World came out every 2 months from Hong Kong, and there wasn't much material to be utilised out there. There wasn't much print space, not like today.
What is surfing to you, Marty?
Surfing?
Yeah.
Well, surfing's a very personal thing, Tim. It varies from individual to individual, and I'm not one to dictate what other people's perception of it should be, but to me it's a pretty cool thing to do in this day and age. It certainly gets you out of your head and gets you into a place where you don't need to think about a lot of other things. It drags you into the here and now, whether you like it or not, and that's a pretty good thing in this over high technology, over information age. It borders on neo-spiritual and cosmic experiences on an awesome barrel, and I think surfing can be whatever label the individual wants to hang on. For me, it's a pretty cool thing to do still, and way back when I started it was a totally different thing and not like it is today. What surfing is today and back then, surfing today has very different, it's a lifestyle and people are paid to perform at a very high professional level and travel. It's a dream lifestyle. Back then, surfers were social outlaws and rebels of a whole new way of celebrating life and getting out of the post-Second World War Depression era, when it was uncool to surf midweek, when you had to wear a suit and tie to work, and when it was very uncool to dress like a surfie and not be a straight-laced citizen. Back then, surfers were knights for the cause of human liberation of the spirit. And to be a famous surfer was to be a very celebrated and cool dude, and today it's more a monetary, financial, sportsman status. It was somewhat different.
Surfing's changed a hell of a lot, like especially in the Gold Coast, hasn't it? Like since you've been around, how's surfing changed?
Well, today on the Soul Coast, it's a burn you bastard attitude. I'll take whatever I need because I'm on the surfer, on the pro surfer on the way up, and stuff you. If I burn you too bad, there's plenty of other people doing it, so I don't give a damn. There's too many people around, and it's just modern surfing. I won't say it's good or bad, it's just the way population's evolved, and our councillors don't really consider surfing recreational space as on their agenda. It has more to do with stabilising economic growth, with real estate that put people's bums closer to sand. So whether we like it or not, if you live in the city, that's our choice, and you have to accept the crowds. There's nothing you can do about it except whinge to your councillor. Well, before, when we had BG before groin, we used to have snapper, then they'd stop just before Little Marley. You'd have Little Marley bank, then you'd have Rainbow proper bank, and that would finish just before Green Mountain. Then Green Mountain would kick off, and then you'd have Lower Green Mountain, and you'd have Spot X. We had all these incredible little places where you could break the crowd up. Instead of concentrating in one area, now we've got a concentration of people, like a pack of hungry wolves, all trying to devour a dead carcass. And they're ripping and gnawing and tearing and barking and snubbling at each other for a piece of meat. Whereas in those days we shared the kill. Nowadays everybody's tearing the carcass apart.
What do you think, like compared to when you first started out, how the surf photographers, it's a changed world, eh? Lots happened and the whole thing.
Oh mate, in my wildest dreams, when I was doodling perfect barrels and guys standing them at universities boring lectures, when I was doodling perfect images that I'd like to shoot, they're actually happening today in sequence, and it's like, it's beyond my wildest expectations of what's actually happening today. People being paid to photograph, surf and travel to dream locations. Who would have thought it possible way back when I first started? When you had to shoot film, you had to either process the black and white yourself in a dark room, and the interval between developing it and seeing it would have been at least 2.5 hours, or 2 hours when you process black and white, and 5 days if you shot colour by the time you shipped it to Melbourne for processing. And the technology advance, the income that some high-end surf photographers are making today, it's just great. It's just unreal for the individuals who've honed their craft to that level, and good luck to them. They deserve every penny for the risks they take.
You know, like the photographer's got a quality.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, baby. You know that. Okay. For a start, shooting surf photos is the most fun part of the gig. When you actually get to marketing surf photos or trying to make $1 for your dance, it's a bit like being a dolphin surfacing next to a shark. Because what actually happens is, it's a bit like the stock market in terms of liquid assets. You've got an image, you want to sell it. And there's a whole bunch of other people who are in on that feeding frenzy of shooting that photo who also want to sell it. And the politics that you just talked about is a bit like the stock market. It's kill or be killed. And unless you have the in the loop of being part of the inner circle, the trading knowledge of who's in popular with editor, who's in popular with which company, who got their photos to them first, who also has similar images of the same product, unless you have that in-house knowledge, you're going to be a dolphin surfacing next to sharks, and you're going to get gnawed badly. The stealing someone else's established mojo, like you go to the effort of shooting the surfers, telling them to come to a certain photo shoot, so you're out there making an earn from your gig, and then other people come and try and grass cut that action. You've got to bring your own surfers to the gig so everybody's sharing from the same bowl. Instead of leapfrogging other people's efforts at organising to bring surfers to a certain shoot, you can't just grass cut. There's a bit of expected ethics involved here, and it's very hard to break into the circle to get A, the surfer's trust, and B, the respect of the other photographers, so they'll share data with you. And there's a lot of grass cutting and low class attitudes out there. Hey, a bunch of legends, liars and losers watching you.